How's it going, boys? Welcome in. My name is Trick, and today we're going to be talking about the strongest melee builds in Season 4. Now, there's one thing that I want you guys to know is that these builds don't necessarily will apply to wars. This build will apply pretty much for everything else other than wars. Just because some of these builds might be utilized in war does not mean that these builds are war focused. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. And here we go. Where to find these builds? Well, in New World Champ. This is where you guys will be able to find every single one of my builds. If you guys don't know about it, I will leave a link on the section down below so you guys can access this website. The first build that we're going to be talking about today is going to be Sword and Shield and Spear. As a matter of fact, every single one of the builds I will be showcasing today is going to be Sword and Shield and Spear. And I hope that you guys are not surprised to hear that, because Sword and Shield and Spear is possibly the best melee weapon in the entire game. It has everything in it, alright? It has sustained damage, mobility, utility, survivability, even burst damage. It has a great potential. It's no surprise to anyone that the Sword and Shield will be one of the best weapons, melee weapons in the entire game. Actually, one of the best weapons in general. And when we're talking about the strongest melee build for Season 4, again, it's not surprised that the Sword and Shield will be utilized in all three of them. So the first build that we're going to be talking about is going to be the Bursting Bunny and the Leeching Bunny. These are two crowds' favorite builds. These are being extremely dominating the meta, and these builds are pretty good. All right, this build is going to run with Shuriken Heals and Invigorated. Now, I created this build as a medium archetype. The reason why is because medium is pretty much always a good standard to go. But I will actually recommend for the duration of Season 4, I don't know what they will be doing in Season 5, but for the duration of Season 4, I recommend that you guys actually go for heavy instead of medium. As for the attributes, right here I have 350 strength, 200 constitution, and 50 focus. This is pretty good for this build. Later on, the other build that we're going to be showcasing, probably you can go with 300 dexterity instead. That way you can get the cleansing, but it doesn't really matter that much. It's all about your play style, right? On every single one of the Sword and Shield builds, we're going to be utilizing a sword with King Speed. If you guys have never played Sword and Shield with a sword with King Speed, you will notice that King Speed is one of the best tools in the entire game whenever you're playing Sword and Shield, to both escape the enemy and also, gap close the enemy. Because this thing right here with the Sword and Shield, it has no cooldown. This is 20% movement speed for 5 seconds every time that you crit. And if you combine that with King Speed, it is phenomenal tool. It's so freaking fast. The enemy will never be able to escape from you, or the enemy will never be able to catch up to you. For the hard rune, we're going to be using the Stalwart hard rune of Stormform. Obviously, that makes sense because we're going to be bruising and fighting every single person that we see, 1v1, 1v2, 1v3, 1vx. It's, you name it, right? On the ring, we're going to be using the Blood Drinker. The great thing about the Blood Drinker is that it's going to buff every single one of your life steal. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of base damage away, but worry not. That minus 25% damage from Ghoul's Harmony is not actually 25 total percent damage. This is base damage, which it actually rounds down to minus 14% damage, right? Minus 14% damage plus 25% life steal. Whenever you're using all your basic attacks, Perforate and Cyclone, you're gonna get an insane amount of healing. And the best thing about this is that Cyclone, the actual healing from the Cyclone ability, does not have to do anything with the damage that you did. The Cyclone heal, it says Cyclone hits heal you for 35% of the weapon damage. Meaning, if your spear says that it deals 1,000 damage, then your Cyclone will heal you for 350. It does not matter how many weakens you have. It does not matter how many ranks the enemy have. It does not matter if you're using the Blood Drinker. The lifesteal from Leeching Cyclone will always be the same, regardless how much armor, how much, it doesn't really get impacted. Now, it doesn't get impacted in a negative way, but that lifestealing will actually be impacted by the extra 25% lifesteal from Ghoul's Harmony, and also from, just the Blood Drinker ring in general. So the Leeching Cyclone cannot be impacted negatively, but it can be impacted positively to make it heal you even more. So this is right here the bursting, not the bursting. This is right here the Leeching Bunny, and again we're going to be utilizing Perforate instead of Leg Sweep because this is a very basically just a fighter build. For the Bursting Bunny, the things that change are a couple of things, not that much. So the first thing that is going to change is obviously the spear. We're going to be looking for a spear that is more of a bursting damage. Whenever you hit the enemy from behind, or whenever you hit the enemy with those leg sweeps, you can do massive amount of damage. We went to the Ankh because we don't want to miss any damage. We're still going to be using Shirky Heals and Invigorated. The reason we're not using Blood Drinker is because, again, we want to do as much damage as we possibly can. And on top of that, this build is not all about life stealing and leeching. For the Heart Rune, you can use this one. This is pretty staple. Or you could use a Detonate. We're going to be using Leg Sweep with Cyclone. Well, now, if you're wondering why we didn't pick Coup de Grace, it's because Coup de Grace, it's two things, right? One, it locks you down in place. Yes, it deals a beautiful amount of damage. But if you want Coup de Grace to do the most amount of damage, then you need to go with a Trenchant Strike Spear, right? And if you go with a Trenchant Strike Spear, that means that it's going to be a wasted perk until you hit the enemy with a heavy attack, which it doesn't happen at all with a spear, or whenever you hit the enemy with a Coup de Grace. So it's not really reliable for most cases and in most scenarios. So I usually like to go with a Cyclone instead, because if you hit the enemy with a leg sweep, then you can do one basic attack and one Cyclone, and which will be much more damage than your Coup de Grace ever will do. And on top of that, you don't need to put a point in Coup de Grace. You don't need to freaking use Trenchant Strike. So yes, going this way will actually give you more damage potential than going with Coup de Grace and Trenchant Strike. Well, now that we're done showing you guys this build and the gear, how about I show you guys the rotation? And here we are. So I'm gonna show you guys the rotation about the Leeching body. The crazy thing about this build is that you don't really need like a rotation. This build is beautiful. This build is going there, just massacre the enemy with your Perforate, your Skewer, your Cyclone. There's not really that much of a preparation. The only preparation that I can kind of recommend for this build, and the only kind of rotation, is if you do hit an enemy with a Shield Rush and a Shield Bash, then go behind them and hit them with a Skewer. The reason that I want you to go behind them and hit them with a Skewer is because the Skewer, whenever it crits, it gives you that juicy 20% increased damage for 10 seconds. And yeah, that's basically the only rotation for this build, you know, in the combination with Perforate and Skewered and Cyclone. You know, this is just a fighter build, not really a build that you need a rotation, a certain alignment of abilities to make it work. No, you can use this build and just use your abilities whenever you see fit, and you will do wonders. Now, the one thing that I would like you guys to understand is please read the abilities of the spear. Just because maybe you don't have like a lot of time to spend in your world to understand what every weapon is doing so you can create your own builds, like, I don't have a problem with that. And if you want to copy my builds, I'm completely and 100% okay with it. But at least please read the ability so you understand why is it that we are picking these perks, why are we picking this passive. And these things greatly enhances and change your entire gameplay. And what I mean by this, let's say that you're fighting against a spear player that doesn't know anything about the abilities of the spear, and they simply just spamming all of their abilities blindly like this. And now look at my abilities on the spear, right? Every single one of them is on cooldown for a pretty good duration, so for the whole time I cannot use any spear ability. Now, if you were to read the spear abilities and read about refreshing jabs or read about aggressive maneuvers, you can actually utilize the spear's abilities and attacks to a way more efficient way, and you can have an infinite rotation of abilities, making you a much better spear player than the competition. And what do I mean by that? If you dodge before hitting like an ability like such, right? Like, look at my cooldowns, right? As you guys can see, basically you can have a never-ending spam abilities if you dodge before doing an ability, and if you can send in there a couple of basic attacks here and there, look how much better this is rather than just spamming all of your 3 abilities and then having no abilities for like 7 or 8 seconds. And that right there will separate you from an average spear player and make you a way better spear player. Well, that's it pretty much for the Leeching Bunny. Oh, what I was telling you guys earlier, if you're going to be using a sword and shield and you're not going to be using a sword with king speed, you are literally throwing. Because like I told you guys, if you're going to be using this right here, critical precision, and you crit with the sword and the shield, look at those 2 movement speeds down there, right? They stack, they give you 40+% movement speed. This is an insane tool, not only to escape the clumps, but also to catch up to the enemies. Let's say that an enemy is right there. He's trying to run away from you, and you come in with a leaping strike. You're going to crit him from behind, and now you can just run after them or next to them for such a great duration. And the great thing about these two speeds is that their cooldown is the same as the duration, so meaning that you can have an uptime of basically 100% of it. As long as you are creating the enemy from behind, or you're just creating the enemy in general, you're always going to have this movement speed. And as a heavy sword and shield and spear player, if you're using your leaping strike to go in and then you don't have anything to escape, then all you had to simply do is either fight the clumps with like a shield rush, shield bash, swing, swing, swing into the enemies until you crit, and then you immediately start running away together with your leaping strike and, you know, your spear abilities or whatnot. So yeah, those are some nice tricks that it can help you become a significant much better player with a sword and shield and spear in heavy medium. And this is going to be the rotation for the bursting bunny. You know, it's the only difference between this one and the leeching bunny is that now you have leg sweep, right? And how will you utilize that leg sweep? Well, the same as always, right? You're going to try to hit the enemy, just try to bait their dodges, and whenever they have baited their dodges, or whenever you have baited their dodges and you're ready to go, then you're gonna hit them with that shield rush and a shield bash. Then you're gonna go behind them. Make sure you go behind them always, right? Because whenever you go behind them, then you're gonna hit them with those 100% critical strike. Now, let me say something before I continue. If you're fighting against a heavy guy, or a guy that you know that the fight will last a little bit longer, and you hit the enemy with a shield bash and then you go behind them, if you are behind them, it's better to hit them with a leg sweep into a skewer, all right? The reason why I want you to hit them with a leg sweep into a skewer, or you don't even need to necessarily hit them with a leg sweep if you don't feel like it. But the reason why I'm asking for you to hit him with a skewer first is because the skewer will apply that massive 50% anti, you know, weaken. And on top of that, you're going to apply a very, very nice bleed on the enemy. And the reason why I'm asking you to use the skewer before you use the cyclone is because if the fight is going to last a couple of seconds longer than intended, then the enemy being weakened for a second will give you the upper hand in the outcome of that battle. Now, if you're fighting against a healer or against a mage or somebody that is very squishy and they take massive damage, then you will hit them with a shield bash, go behind them. Then after you are behind them, you're gonna hit them with a leg sweep, basic attack, cyclone. All right, that is gonna be your bread and butter, and that is gonna be most of the damage. And on top of that, as soon as you hit the enemy with that cyclone, they're going to be slowed, right? Meaning that you can punish them with basic attack, or then you can use the skewer if you feel like it. So once again, the rotation for the bursting bunny, if you're fighting a big tanky boy, then you're gonna hit him with a shield rush, shield bash, go behind them, hit him with a leg sweep, and then hit him with a skewer, and then as they're getting up, hit him with like a cyclone or something else. If you're fighting against somebody that is very squishy, then you're gonna hit him with a shield rush, shield bash, you're gonna go behind them, you're gonna hit him with a leg sweep, basic attack, cyclone. I didn't let the basic attack out there because, as you guys know, I have a goddamn broken hand and it's very hard for me to left click, so my reaction time is not the best one out there, but essentially will be left sweep, basic attack, cyclone, and this works like a charm every single time. And that's pretty much it for the sword and shield and spear. Now we're gonna jump into the second strongest build for melee that I recommend in Season 4. And that second strongest build that I will be recommending for Season 4 is gonna be no other than the freaking, you know, the harassment. If you guys have seen anybody play this build is incredibly powerful. Once again, you can play this build in heavy, medium. Actually, you can play this build also in light. I love playing this build in light myself, simply because I have a lot of damage. But this build, once more, you can play it in light, medium, and heavy. I actually recommend it in the current meta that we are to play with heavy. Right, the reason why we're going with Aldo over here is because Aldo is a phenomenal tool to do that burst damage whenever the enemy is on the floor, and I will show you guys the rotation pretty soon. We're going with shirking heals and health. You can go also with invigorated. It doesn't matter much. The reason that we're not going with invigorated exactly with this build that I'm showing you here is because you notice that this build is light, right? And whenever I'm playing in light, I'm not really fighting in the clumps. I'm more looking for the 1v1, maybe 1v2, or just looking for the people around it. But this is this build, right? Again, you can create this build in heavy with a dark void plate and just slap full heavy in there and just be a power freaking house, right? For the sword, the same thing. We're going to be using king speed on the sword. We're going to be utilizing, although it's one of the best offensive flails out there. It already comes with refreshing move in it. So you have two choices. Either you put a gem for more sustained damage, or you put Powerful Eruption for more burst damage. At the end of the day, is 100% up to you, alright? This is how the build for the flail is going to be looking like. We're going to be going for Smite. We're going to be going for Arcane Explosion. I forget, Eruption, whatever the name is. We're not going to go with Better Together this one because these things solely scale with focus. We're going to go with a trip, but we're not going to get the last point simply because the last point does not enable us to do the big burst damage combination that I will show you guys in a second. If you're going to be playing with heavy or with a tower shield, just go ahead and pick all their talents. Just read them before you make these decisions. So yes, if you're going to be using a tower shield, probably you don't want to pick this one over here, and probably you want to pick this one over here. For the sword and the shield, again, it's the same build that I utilize for every single one of my sword and shield builds. This is my favorite way to go with the sword and the shield. It is phenomenal. It gives me great defenses. It gives me great utility. And it's just a very, very good, well-rounded sword and shield build. Whenever sword and shield is not the primary weapon. In this case, the primary weapon is going to be the flail. In the previous case, the primary weapon was the spear, right? So the sword and shield is just our supporting weapon for this build. You can use the Primal Fury, but you could also use the Hard Rune of Stormform if you feel like it. We're going to go with 350 Strength, 300 Constitution, 50 Focus. If you feel like it, you can go with less strength and more focus, but I don't really recommend it. And yes, this is going to be here, the harassment build. And now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the rotation and how this build works and why this build is called the actual harassment build. So for the harassment build, I'm not going to go over what the sword and shield rotation is because you guys know how the sword and shield is played, right? You usually use that leaping strike, do a couple of left clicks here and there, and then whenever the enemy is out of stamina or whenever you have an opening, you hit the enemy with that shield rush and the shield bash, right? Like that is a standard for the sword and the shield that will pretty much never change. What changes is what we're going to do with our other weapon once we hit the enemy with that shield bash, and that is where the flail is gonna come in handy, right? So we're gonna hit the enemy with that shield rush, shield bash, or maybe just not even a shield rush. Maybe you can hit him with a shield bash. After you hit the enemy with a shield bash, then you will immediately, obviously, go behind them. Why? Because you want every single one of your flail attacks to be a critical. So here's where the combo is going to start. And the combo is going to go something like this, right? For those of you that don't know what happens, we're going to use the flail trip, a basic attack, and then arcane eruption, right? It all happened very, very quickly. But put it this way, what we're doing here is essentially the same thing that we're doing with the spear, right? Which is leg sweep, basic attack, cyclone. On this sense, it's going to be leg sweep, basic attack, arcane eruption. All right, so leg sweep, basic attack, arcane eruption, and this is going to be the bread and butter for the flail and the sword and the shield build. After they get up, then you follow that up with a smite, because the smite not only has a beautiful range, but it also has a quick animation. And that freaking purple circle is huge. It deals insane amount of damage. And that is basically right there your bread and butter with the sword and the shield. You're going to hit him with a shield rush. You're going to hit him with a shield bash. You're going to go behind them. Leg sweep, basic attack, arcane eruption. And as they're going to go away, then you hit them with a smite as they try to run away. Now, that will work against pretty much everyone. Except if you're playing against a dexterity player that has 300 dexterity and they have the cleanse. If they are a good dexterity player and they are very aware of their cleansing and they're fast with it, what that means is that whenever you hit the enemy with a shield bash, before you go behind them to hit them with a trip, they will swap weapons and get out of that stun and immediately run away. But worry not, we have a counter for these slippery bastards. And the counter for that is, we're going to be doing a little bit less damage, but we're still going to beat their ass. And the way that that goes is, trip, the ability trip on the flail is so incredibly fast that, believe it or not, you can do a shield rush into a trip. All right, I'm sorry I didn't swap weapons. Once again, my hand is broken. My reaction is not as quickly. But that is the beauty of this build, by the way. Let me go ahead and get my shield rush back. But yes, you can do shield rush into sweep, into basic attack, arcane eruption whenever you're fighting archers, because if you hit the archer with a shield bash, again, they will just swap weapon and get away. So what we're gonna do is gonna hit the shield rush. You're gonna hit the shield rush, then you're gonna hit the flail, sweep, and treat freaking arcane eruption. I am really sorry. I'm really sorry I'm messing this up, but that's basically the combo right there. All right, I'm gonna try to show you guys one more time so you guys don't miss it. All right, so it's gonna be Shield Rush into Leg Sweep, Basic Attack, Arcane Eruption. Again, the hits are not going to be crit, but they're still going to be doing insane amount of damage, and you're gonna beat them up. So that's 2 ways to go whenever you're fighting the enemy. Now, there's other way to go. If you are fighting against an enemy and the enemy is already running away from you, which means that you are behind them, then you don't need to hit them with a Shield Bash, all right? Picture that this dummy is just running away from me, and that is the guy that I'm trying to kill. So you're gonna hit him with a Shield Rush, then you're gonna hit him with a Drip, Basic Attack, Arcane Eruption, and guess what? As they get up, you're not gonna hit them with a Smite. You're gonna swap to the shield, to the sword and the shield. You're not gonna keep on punish them, and then force that Shield Bash, and then whenever you force a Shield Bash, you hit them with a Smite. The reason that I want you to hit him with a Shield Bash before the Smite is simply because of Olo, right? 20% more damage to stuns or knockdown enemies, and we know how good that Smite hurts. So hitting an enemy with a Shield Bash before hitting them with a Smite is going to add 20% more damage. So if the enemy is running away, you're gonna hit him with a Shield Rush, Trip, Basic Attack, Arcane Eruption, then swap to the shield, hit him with a Shield Bash, and hit him with a Smite. And if the enemy is still alive at this point, you still have Leaping Strike to catch up to them and beat them in the ass if they want to get away from you. Although it's a phenomenal weapon because having Refreshing Move is a great tool, all right? The flail is going to be your primary weapon that you're going to have out all the time because you're going to be left clicking with it, and look at those cooldowns go down like crazy, right? You're going to have the sword and the shield in the back as only as your utility tool and as your, your setup weapon. But your primary weapon is going to be the Olo with all of these abilities and attacks. And in the meantime, just left click, left click, left click, and left click. And why is this build called the Harasser? Well, simply because this build has an insane amount of utility, insane amount of stuns, insane amount of lockdowns, and it's so freaking ridiculously powerful. Like if you hit an enemy with a Leaping Strike that is 1 CC, this is another CC, this is another CC, this is another CC, and this is another CC, right? And whenever you are on top of a healer, whenever you're on top of a mage, anybody that you're really fighting, you are constantly harassing the living shit out of them, and it feels really, excuse me, it feels really, really powerful for you to utilize. And being on the receiving end of this build, you feel really, really, really miserable. But that's pretty much it for the sword and the shield and the flail, the harassment build. Now let's go and jump into the last build that I'll be recommending for season 4, and I'm pretty sure you guys already know which one it is, and it's gonna be no other than the sword and the shield and the great sword utilizing Serenity, right? I know some of you might be like, what the hell, Trek? Why are you not utilizing the sword and the shield and the Warhammer? That build is one of the most powerful builds in the game. Yeah, it is an incredibly powerful build in the game, but that build is as strong as your enemy is bad, right? Because that build doesn't have a lot of chase down potential. That build really shines if the enemy just comes to you and it starts fighting you, right? Because you don't have a lot of CC. Well, you have all of the CC in the game. But the main thing about it is that you need to hit with 1 CC in order for you to hit with the other CC, which is not that freaking hard, right? Whenever we're considering about sword and shield with the Shield Rush and the Shield Bash, it's a great setup, and we're utilizing it for this other weapon. So why is the Warhammer any different than the Spear and the Flail and the Greatsword? Well, the reason why the Warhammer is a lot different than the Spear and the Flail and the Greatsword is because the Warhammer, for it to be good and for it to be do the maximum amount of damage you can potentially do, is with an entire CC rotation, right? It's usually gonna be of like a Shield Bash, then with a Cleared Out, then with a Shockwave, then with a Wrecking Ball and a Light Attack, right? And this whole time, if you had a teammate next to you that CCs the enemy, it will 100% mess your entire rotation, and now your build is pretty much useless until you get all of your cooldowns back. And that, for me, is not a reliable build that you can utilize in pretty much every situation. Is it a mega powerful build? Yes. Is an extremely easy build? Yes. Is an extremely dumb beginner build mega powerful, extremely dumb? Yes. But the main thing about this build is it really shines when you are by yourself versus like 5 players and every single one of them is melee and have no brain cells. If you have another teammate next to you that it has a CC and it interrupts one of your CCs, so it just wakes one of the enemies up, then your entire combo is off. And now you need to just hold your right click and wait for all your cooldowns to come back so you can try it again. And for me, that is not a reliable build. All right. And that is why I will not be covering it as one of the strongest builds that you can play in Season 4. Okay. So moving on to the last build, the one that I want to show you guys. And if you go to New World Champ, you can find some of this build right here with a great sword and this one in the shield. You can find the Asmongold build. This is a very, very dummified build if you want to utilize the great sword. You know, Serenity with the sword and the shield. You can find other builds like, you know, like the great sword, duelist, sword and shield, and fighter. This is also a great build. You can utilize this build with 200, 200, 200, 300 dexterity, 300 strength. It's 100% up to you, whatever you do with this build. Once again, this build right here shows as medium, but you can 100% play it in heavy if you feel like. It's not much different than the sword and the shield and the flail and the spear. The only thing that you will be replacing is, well, the spear or the flail, or the Serenity Greatsword. The Serenity Greatsword is a phenomenal, fantastic, one of the best artifacts in the entire game. And when it comes down to this build rotation, well, not much changes, right? Not much. It's different than anything else because, well, all you're doing over here is essentially going for that shield rush into a shield bash, then swap onto the Greatsword and go, whoa! And do a big heavy attack, and then you know, do your abilities and more and just do a massive thousands, incredible amount of damage. Now, right here, I'm using the crosscut because I was using a crosscut build from earlier. But whenever we're talking about rotation with a great sword and the sword and the shield, there's not much like synergy of like CC that you can do between both weapons, because we know that the great sword, while it has stuns, while it has CCs, they're not really like you can chain it into a chain CC, right? Because it doesn't have like a knockdown, it doesn't have like a stun, so it's all stagger, and just damage. So the only combination that I can offer to you guys whenever it comes to great sword and sword and shield is if you hit the enemy with that shield bash, then go behind them and whop, hit them with a big old whopper with a great sword. And then, I mean, you all know how to play Serenity, right? I don't need to tell you guys how to play Serenity because Serenity is a great tool that everybody's been using basically since the release of season 3, and it still is a powerhouse of a weapon. For the perk on the Serenity, we're going to be putting the gem socket, and that the gem socket you can put either a Jasper or you can put a Moonstone, or you can put an Opal. It's 100% up to you. This is the abilities that I recommend. As you can see, I'm not running crosscut like I was in, you know, I was showing you guys a little bit ago right now. And as for the sword and the shield, pretty much is the same. And again, you guys can find and follow these builds in New World Champ. And if you guys have any question about any of this build that I just showcased, remember that you guys can always find me on Twitch. I'm streaming there pretty much every single day, all day long. All right, so if I did not answer one of your questions, or if I did not go too in depth in this video, because I want to keep it short, because I want to release the 3 best weapons for range, magical, and healer builds as well. So I don't want to jump into much detail because I don't want the video to be, you know, 20-30 minutes long. So it's pretty much giving you guys the general information. If you guys want to get better at the build and understand it more, then go ahead and drop by the stream, ask me some in-depth question, or just simply keep on playing with these builds. And I guarantee you, as long as you play any of these 3-4 builds that I just told you, if you play them in heavy, and as long as you're using and doing the right thing, you will have nothing but success, because these builds are just simply that powerful. If you watch all the way until here, I got nothing else to say other than thank you. Please consider subbing to the channel, sharing this content in this video. Like I said, remember to check on my YouTube channel, my Twitch channel. And until the next video, you guys be safe and bye-bye.